I wanted to take a few minutes to talk with you personally about the upcoming offering of the Men's Story Group. I have put some information out on my website. I posted a short little video that is on LinkedIn. I've been sending emails and communicating. But sometimes I think what gets lost is my being able just to talk in a personal way where you can hear my voice, hear the enthusiasm, hear some of my thinking related to why I'm, one, excited to be facilitating this particular offering, but also why I think this would be such a great and powerful thing for you and the others that might be participants in this offering. When Coaching the Crossroads began, this was one of the first things that I did in terms of a group experience and getting into story work. I sat with a group of men that I knew, and we went through these really powerful stories in our lives, really informative ones. And this is an opportunity to take what was learned in that experience and put it into something that is actually really intentional. It's surprising how little we really understand our stories. Few men have ever had a chance to, one, write their stories in any sort of purposeful way, to write these particular stories, and then to share it in a group and have other people hear it. If you have participated in any of the men's story nights in this last year, I've been offering those in part as a preview for what was to be coming with this men's story group. But what's really fascinating is what it feels like when you actually, one, prepare your story, you read it out loud, the version that you actually wrote, privately, and now suddenly you're sharing it in, that personal way within that small group. But then to hear the feedback and the questions and the observations that the others offer, it's really something special. And so I want to be able to provide this opportunity, but I'm not just picking any stories. These are actually really formative stories, and these particular themes I have found in my own life and as I have interacted with men in my one-on-one coaching, I have found these to be really important stories that have shaped the way that we show up in relationships. So the first one is just the family that we're born into, this prehistory, our parents, the personalities, the circumstances that either brought them together or the circumstances around our birth and our entry into the family and the cultural waters in which we were born into. We don't take time to really even think about that. And we kind of have heard a narration. There have probably been stories that have been recounted maybe at birthdays or family get-togethers or when you have been with certain family members. But to move into intentionality, to really think about that story, not a lot of opportunity. The next theme we're going to be looking at is the role that we played. And, there's birth order stuff. There's responsibilities that we were given with our parents, by our parents, with our siblings. There's some things that were explicitly stated, some things that we just naturally just fell into and felt like this was our role. And we became really good at it, especially as we moved through our middle school and high school years. And those roles are roles we tend to fall into as adults and in the relationships that we carried into our adult years. We're going to be talking about conflict and desire, which seems like, well, that seems a little vague. Well, there were things that we wanted. There was things that were our longings or desires in our family growing up. And there was also the way that conflict showed up. And usually conflict shows up because of a desire or a longing that was had by somebody, and there was an interruption. There was someone that was not willing to allow that to happen. There was either boundaries or limitations, or there was some sort of opposition that was raised to it. And conflict showed up. And some families showed up with conflict in a really big way. Others, it was really frowned upon or not accepted, or there was not a lot of permission given to express, feelings or move through emotions or through the conflict. And so there's that dynamic. And again, our conflict tolerance, our willingness to bring our desires, our even recognizing what our inner longings are, is tied to what we learned in our younger years. The final thing is this idea of heartache and leaving home. And this actually ties in with grief and how we process change and the unpleasant and discomfort that comes with that. And sometimes our story is related to, I headed off to college and such and such happened. Sometimes the leaving home happened in kind of an emotional way or in a relational way, even while we were still living at home. Or maybe it lingered, and it wasn't actually until some major event happened into our early adult years. But there was heartache of some kind. And if it wasn't ours, it was likely our mother's or our parents in some way, or maybe even a sibling. But to get back and close to that, some of those things we think they've kind of been resolved because they haven't been thought about or addressed in a long time. Others of those, they just were never talked about. And we go back and we revisit those things and say, oh my gosh, there was something there. So, kind of rambling on a little bit here, just to simply say there's some really powerful stories that are ahead. And so, what I'm doing with this offering is we're going to be sitting down every other week, and what I'm going to be doing is inviting everybody to bring their story. And this is going to be a limited group. This is not just wide open. It's not something that is going to be a different group of guys every single session. This is going to be the same group for each of the sessions. So there's going to be an opportunity to really get to know and hear one another's stories in a personal way, and build relationships with that group and build trust. And we're going to have a chance to share and engage one another's stories. If you have been a part of the men's story night in this last year, you know a little bit of what that feels like and looks like. And then in the off week, because we're going to have a 2-week interlude between each of our sessions, I'm going to be providing a little bit of a video deal, kind of like what I'm doing now. But I'm going to be talking around this theme of what the water crossings and wilderness wanderings and the stages of coming of age are all about in our lives. I guess the final thing I'll say is there's a total of 8 stages that I've identified in the biblical story of Jacob. And what's interesting about him is he provides really a fairly well-rounded perspective of the early and later years of a man's life. And while he was in the ancient Near East, while he was Jewish in that culture at that time, there's still things today that we can draw from as men in the modern era. And we can find a sense of meaning and purpose and recognition of the coming of age that we've come to. And, what's interesting about the coming of age is not about doing it right. It's not about crossing, touching our foot on the base and continuing around the diamond and making it back to home plate. I think that we look at this as like, you got to do this and then you finally arrived. It's more of like we just find ourselves on this journey, and we have got to kind of recognize the dynamics that are present, so that we can even say, hey, this is what's happening. And sometimes we didn't have a chance to essentially touch the base as we were rounding the diamond. At times we actually got to go back and give ourselves opportunity to say, hey, I just need to revisit this and explore this particular part of my story, because if we don't have those particular stages, or if we've not done the work that we need to in those, we've got to go back and do some repair and bring some completion and wholeness to those things. But anyway, we are going to have an opportunity to go through these stages, and the first 4 are the initiating stages. And I'm calling this first offering dusk, because dusk is refers to the darkness, that which we cannot see. And in the Jewish culture, dusk is actually the beginning of the day, and dawn is actually the second half of the day. And so, as I look at this, is there are 4 major events that happened before we even knew what was happening. And here we are now, and maybe it's quarter life, maybe it's midlife years, and we are finally making sense of the life that we've been living. And so the first 4 initiating stages are called dusk, and we're going to be starting on that. There will be a future offering that will be dawn, and those are going to be just as engaging and just as informative, but they come at a time when we are actually able to have a little bit more agency over our choices, and they will have implications for us, of course, in our future. I'm hopeful with what you're hearing from me that you'd be interested in being a part of this particular offering. And if you have questions, if you want to talk with me more about it, I would love to discuss that with you. I appreciate you taking some time just to listen a little bit more from me about what this is about, because I think this is going to be something really, really special. And I'm looking forward to the group of men that will be a part of this first official offering of the water crossings and wilderness wanderings with Coaching the Crossroads. So talk with you again real soon.